welcome to the deep dive. Today we're kind of pushing past the really big names, Paul, Peter, James, and we're zeroing in on the operational backbone, the hidden figures of the early Christian mission.
Right. These are the people who were absolutely essential, handling the diplomacy, the logistics, the sheer administrative weight of what was becoming this incredibly fast-growing movement across the Roman Empire.
Exactly. So we're diving deep into three specific men: Titus, Epaphroditus, and Tychicus. Highly trusted agents.
And they weren't just like assistants. Think of them more as specialized operatives. Paul trusted them with the actual survival of the message when it was incredibly fragile.
That's a great way to put it.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how their stories show that faithfulness wasn't always about, public speaking or big miracles. It was often about immense personal cost, discretion, and just quiet endurance, specific skills for specific tough jobs.
Okay, so our sources, they sort of piece together these lives, showing their conversions, the risks, which sound pretty insane, and how they really functioned as Paul's key envoys, his messengers, his partners.
Yeah.
So we've kind of framed it around their main roles. Titus, the envoy and stabilizer; Epaphroditus, the wounded servant showing strength and weakness; and Tychicus, the faithful messenger, the logistics guy.
You could almost call them the holy bureaucracy, if that doesn't sound too strange. I mean, the mission needed structure. It needed reliable delivery.
Needed boots on the ground.
And people tough enough to face down hostility, illness, even death on the road.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. Let's tackle the first one. The early church faced huge challenges. They definitely needed a fixer. So let's unpack Titus, the radical envoy, the church stabilizer.
Right, Titus. His story kicks off in Antioch, northern Syria, and his conversion wasn't just, I believe something new. It was an immediate, total break.
How so?
He wasn't just leaving a religion. He was walking away from his family's entire business. He was a bronze idol maker.
Oh.
Yeah, and his father supplied the massive temple of Artemis there. So his family was deeply embedded in the pagan economy of the city.
So for Titus to say, I believe in this living God, the one who conquered death, that wasn't just a belief. That was economic and familial suicide, basically.
Absolutely. Total rejection. The sources suggest his father literally disowned him. Then you are no son of mine. Just like that. Titus walked away from his inheritance, his craft, his whole identity up to that point.
That kind of radical break, I guess it primes you for high-stakes work, right? You've already lost almost everything.
Exactly. He had nothing left to lose except his life, which immediately gets put on the line.
Which brings us to the Jerusalem Council, this huge foundational dispute. Why on earth did Paul insist on bringing Titus, an uncircumcised Greek guy, to Jerusalem for that debate? The whole thing was about whether Gentiles needed to follow Jewish law.
Because Titus was the argument, embodied. He was the living proof. Here's this Greek man, definitely not circumcised, who had clearly, undeniably received the Holy Spirit. Paul brought him there precisely to force the issue.
So he wasn't just attending, he was Exhibit A.
Pretty much. The ultimate test case for Gentile inclusion purely by faith, apart from the law of Moses.
A huge gamble.
But it worked.
It really did. Titus comes back to Antioch, and he's carrying this historic placement, the actual letter from the Jerusalem Council.
The ruling,
saying Gentiles only needed to avoid idol food, blood, strangled animals, and sexual immorality. Not the whole law. That piece of parchment, carried by Titus, basically greenlit Gentile Christianity as we know it.
Incredible. And his work didn't stop there. He gets sent to Corinth.
Yeah, the Corinth. The famously divided church, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, I follow Cephas, I follow Christ. Just factions everywhere. Mm-hmm. Paul apparently felt Titus was the only one with the diplomatic chops to handle it.
And he did. He stabilized it. Seems so. He managed to navigate that mess. And then, years later, Paul gives him another almost impossible task. Go to Crete.
Crete had a reputation, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Notoriously difficult place. Paul tasks Titus with basically planting structure in chaos organizing churches, appointing elders in every single town.
Wow. So he's the guy you send into the fire. Mm-hmm. The administrative backbone when things are falling apart or just starting.
It's Titus, handling the political and administrative cost.
Okay. So if Titus dealt with the political cost, our next figure, Epaphroditus, really embodies the physical and emotional toll. This is where we get into that idea of strengths found in weakness.
Right. Epaphroditus, he's from Philippi, and his background, interestingly, involved the Roman military.
Really?
Yeah, conscripted young, around 17, trained to endure hardship, trained to kill. Sources say he struggled with the violence, but later realized that the discipline, the sheer endurance he learned there, that was a skill the kingdom could actually use, just redirected.
Okay, so he had this underlying toughness,
Right.
which he needed, I gather.
Definitely. His church in Philippi, likely led by Lydia, sends him on a mission. He needs to deliver gifts, financial aid, practical support to Paul, who's under arrest in Rome.
And this isn't just popping down the road. This is a major journey.
A really dangerous one. We hear about him facing deserters, likely Roman army deserters, in the mountains of Macedonia. And then a bad storm hits while he's crossing the Adriatic Sea.
Yeah.
Clinging to the ship's rail, praying. He arrives in Rome completely spent, having literally risked his life just to get the delivery through.
And that's just the journey to Rome. What happens there?
Well, this is where it gets really intense, personally. He decides to stay longer than planned. He sees Paul needs help. Maybe Paul's aging. Maybe the imprisonment is taking its toll. Epaphroditus becomes his hands, his feet, helping him with correspondence, basic needs.
Serving Paul directly.
But in doing that, pouring himself out in service to Paul for the work of Christ, he gets sick. Really sick. Paul describes it as close to death, critically ill. And Paul himself is deeply distressed by this, not just for his friend, but worried about the news getting back to Philippi. It shows the depth of their bond.
Wow. But he recovers.
He does. And Paul finds this profound theological insight in his recovery.
Likewise.
He writes back to the Philippians about Epaphroditus, commending him, saying he risked his life to complete what was lacking in your service to me, or something to that effect. But the deeper point Paul saw was, well, he apparently told Epaphroditus something like, you showed me Christ, not in your strength, but in your willingness to lose it.
The power found in weakness. Not in overcoming, but in enduring through breaking.
Exactly. That became the powerful lesson. It wasn't about Roman toughness anymore. It was about Christ-like vulnerability and perseverance through suffering.
And then Epaphroditus himself carries this message back.
Yes. He's the courier for the letter to the Philippians, the very letter praising his sacrifice and telling his home church to welcome him with great joy and honor people like him. His survival, his return, carrying that letter, it validated the whole message about joy in suffering.
That's quite a story. Okay, so we've seen the political cost with Titus, the physical and emotional cost with Epaphroditus. That brings us to the third figure, Tychicus, the faithful messenger. He seems to represent the logistical cost, making sure the actual message gets delivered.
Precisely. Tychicus. From the region of Asia, probably converted in Ephesus during Paul's time teaching in the Hall of Tyrannus, Paul calls him a faithful minister and beloved brother. The key word there is faithful. Reliable.
In what sense?
In the sense that you could trust him with the most precious cargo imaginable at the time. The letters that would have become scripture. This wasn't just sending mail. This was high-stakes delivery of foundational doctrine.
Right. If a letter got lost or intercepted or altered,
huge implications. An entire community's understanding of the faith could be destabilized. Tychicus was the guy you trusted to get it there intact and probably also explain it when he arrived.
and he carried some major ones.
Some of the biggest. He was with Paul during the first Roman imprisonment. He's credited with delivering Ephesians, Colossians, and the incredibly personal, delicate letter to Philemon.
The Philemon letter. That wasn't just text, was it?
No, that mission was incredibly sensitive. He wasn't just carrying the scroll asking Philemon to forgive his runaway bondservant, Onesimus. Tychicus was actually escorting Onesimus back to Colossae, back to Philemon.
So he's delivering reconciliation in person.
Exactly. Carrying the written plea for grace while walking alongside the very person that grace was for. Talk about embodying the message. He delivered a changed relationship, not just a letter.
Wow. And his faithfulness went beyond just being a courier.
Oh, yeah. Later on, we see him back in Ephesus, helping Timothy. The church there was facing some internal challenges, false teachers apparently, including this veiled prophetess figure pushing mystical visions over the core message of the cross.
How did Tychicus handle that? More diplomacy?
Less diplomacy, more fidelity. The sources suggest he simply stood up and countered her claims by reading Paul's letters aloud. The established apostolic word, he brought the anchor of the gospel back. He didn't need fancy arguments. He relied on the authority of the message he'd spent his life carrying.
Sticking to the script, literally.
Pretty much. His life was about the integrity and authority of that revealed word.
Did he have support? These journeys must have been lonely.
Well, there's mention of a key partnership, possibly later marriage, with a woman named Damaris. apparently quite sharp, maybe involved in philosophy in Athens before her conversion, then became a devoted scribe in Ephesus. Their connection seems to have grown through correspondence over all those miles Tychicus traveled, a shared calling.
That's a nice touch. A partnership built on the mission itself.
Yeah, and he just kept going. Later helping Apollos, working with communities in Laodicea, Hierapolis, just steady, reliable service. His gravestone, legend says, eventually read, "Servant of Christ and the Unseen Kingdom."
A perfect summary for him, and really for all three. Okay, so let's pull this together for you, the listener. What does it all mean? We've got Titus leaving everything, stabilizing churches, Epaphroditus facing death, finding strength in weakness, Tychicus literally carrying the New Testament across the empire.
The common thread, it's Paul's absolute trust in them. He handed them the keys, basically, when things were toughest. And their loyalty, fundamentally, wasn't just to Paul the person. It was to the message itself, the one that had radically changed their own lives.
So they show us that real influence, maybe real knowledge, doesn't always come from being the loudest voice or the most famous name.
Exactly. It often comes from being the most dependable, the one willing to pay the cost, whether that's administrative headaches, physical suffering, or just the long, hard, dusty road of logistics to make sure the core message gets through intact.
And that connects directly to learning, doesn't it? Gaining knowledge quickly, like you're doing right now by tuning in, that's vital. But these stories remind us the real test is applying it. It's in the consistent, sometimes quiet actions. Service, endurance. That's what builds something lasting.
Right. Which brings us to a final thought, maybe a challenge for you to mull over. If the core message of Christianity survived the might of Rome, partly because one man, Tychicus, risked everything just to deliver a few fragile scrolls, what's the message you're carrying today? It could be a principle, a truth, a mission that's vital to you or your community. And the question is, are you guarding it? Are you delivering it with that same kind of absolute fidelity?